20th of January 1920, the Egyptian governor of the busy port city of Alexandria has received constantly increasing rumors on the disappearance of young aged ladies last seen in the Laban neighborhood. Alexandria's police station was still unsure about the seriousness of these incidents because at that time these disappearance cases were common due to ladies escaping with their lovers or simply running away from poverty to cities to provide a better welfare for women. That was the case until a mother in her 40s named Zainab Hassan has stepped in and wanted to make an official report of a missing daughter in her 20s. On the 16th of March the same year, another report was made by another man on the disappearance of his daughter for more than 10 days, followed by another report by a man named Hassan Shinawi missing his wife for more than 20 days. The police station was still unconvinced while more and more reports piling up by angry parents or husbands missing a young female friend or family member. At this moment, the detective Yusuf Pasha Ibrahim Hamdi realized that this is not just a regular random disappearance due to girls escaping with their lovers or leaving the city to start a more liberal life. That was a much more dangerous case than what Alexandria's police station has thought. That was the case of the most notorious serial killer in modern Egypt's history. That was the case of Raya and Sakina. Because of the volume of the cases, I will only focus on the three most important and detailed reports Al-Laban police station had received. The first case was from a man named Mahmoud Morsi being interviewed by detectives at Alexandria main police station. He has described the disappearance of his sister, Zanuba Zidan, who went to the market holding a considerable sum of cash with a friend to buy everyday house needs. When her absence became unbearable, Mahmoud went to the market to search for her himself. Most of the eyewitnesses in the market said that they never saw Zanuba that day at the market. Zanuba had never made it to the market. Another report by a 15-year-old mother reported that her mom, who is named Zanuba Aliwa, 35 years old, a bird trader in the market, had been lost in the same morning she was heading there to sell some of her goods while wearing a golden leg bracelets, which was common in Egypt that time. Hassan Shinawi, missing his wife, said that his wife Fatima, 50 years old, works as a maid, left the house with a 54 Egyptian pound, adorned with a total of 288 grams of golden jewelry, has been missing for more than 20 days. She was also last seen accompanied by an unknown woman. Another Syrian trader lost a maid of his, aged 12, went to the market and never seen again. The same fate happened to another 13-year-old girl, Salima Ibrahim Al-Fikri. A kerosene trader has been also missing in the market of Al-Laban neighborhood. Panic quickly started to mount like fire in the dry wood in the alleys of Alexandria. The sight of a lonely woman in a street has become very rare. Parents and husbands alike became increasingly nervous, while nobody knows who would lose his beloved one next. Alexandria police was standing in front of the city's security breaking point helplessly, not knowing where to start or what to search for. In a time where there was no fingerprints, DNA analysis, or surveillance cameras. What actually hindered the police investigation even more was the fact that at that time not everybody held ID cards, and most women used to wear a full face cover, which made the details of some reports obsolete because of the uncertainty regarding the victim's location itself. Despite the severe lack of evidence, there was something common between the victims mentioned in the available reports. All of them were females, most of them young, all of them wearing lots of jewelries because that was 19th century Egypt. All of them worked or had business to do in the Laban market. Also, a large portion of them last seen accompanied by the same unknown woman. The morning of December 11th, 1920, Yusuf Pasha Ibrahim Hamdi receives a telephone signal by a military patrol that requires his attendance at Abi al-Darda Street in the outskirts of Alexandria. A decomposed unknown corpse of a female was found on the side of the street covered by black rugs. Later that day, an old man named Ahmed Morsi made a direct report to the English constable John Phillips at Al-Laban police station, claiming that while digging the ground to perform water pipe maintenance in his apartment, he discovered a human remains underground. When he dug more, he found several bodies buried under his floor. That piece of news was very frustrating for John Phillips and all Al-Laban police station, especially that the house of the buried bodies was less than 50 meters far from the police station itself. The police department performed a large-scale investigation in the whole Al-Laban neighborhood, while Uzbasha Ibrahim Hamdi spread his informants in every corner of Alexandria in an effort to uncover any clue that might lead to the suspect behind the murder spree. After interrogation, Ahmed Morsi declared that his apartment was rented by a man named Mohammed Al-Samni, who was later discovered renting the house of the apartment to other tenants. Short after his declaration, Hamdi's informants managed to locate Al-Samni, arrest him, and put him under interrogation immediately. In the beginning, Al-Samni was reluctant to cooperate with the police, but when realizing that the reality of his situation would definitely lead him to the execution yard, he immediately confessed that he used to rent his rented apartment rooms to other tenants, including prostitutes and other bad reputation men. But he denied any knowledge regarding the murders of the young females. He also added that one of his tenants was a woman in her mid-40s, whom used to work as a prostitute, then later insistently attempted to rent the apartment itself again from the original owner, Ahmed Morsi. Morsi was an old man who was among the first to discover the remains of the disappearing victims. He had a weak sight and over 60 of age, and the evidence against him was weak. Therefore, he was partly executed, but remained under surveillance. For Al-Samni, he was among the main suspects of the vicious murder spree. He had many evidence against him. He was a man with a strong body form, which means he could overpower the victims. The corpses were buried under the apartment floor while it was under his ownership, and he was involved in illegal activities, which indicates a tendency towards larger crimes. The unknown woman was seen with multiple victims before their disappearance, but it was still not enough to claim for certainty that she was an actual suspect, since nobody could confirm if she was the same woman that accompanied the three main mentioned victims in the reports. But it was still a loose ring in the investigation for now. However, approximated sketches were managed to be produced, which resulted in this photo. One of Uzbasha Hamdi's informants managed to gather enough information about a male gold trader increasingly performing selling activities in the gold's black market. Some of these golden jewelries were identified to belong to one of the victims. Hence, all the police efforts shifted towards finding the gold trader, which was easily said than done, because Alexandria was the major port city of entire Egypt. Thus, a lot of illegal activities were done in the city, making the job of distinguishing one criminal from another is a hell of a nightmare for detectives. The residents around Alexandria's police station has reported that a very strong smell of incense and perfumes emitting from a house near the police station itself. That was confirmed by police patrols and Uzbasha Hamdi's informants. When investigations were made, it appeared that the house belonged to a mid-aged woman named Raya. The police disregarded this information or suspicions about this because Raya lived near the police station for a quite long time, and she developed good relations with the police deputies. But when more rumors about Raya's increasing financial state emerged, Uzbasha Hamdi ignored his officers and decided to make a trip to her house. When the house was regularly being searched, a strange box was placed in one of her rooms. The box was used to stash clothes or even being used as a bed, but it was placed in a totally empty room with no closets or anything around it. When the box was removed, the floor was unstable under the box. Therefore, an immediate order was issued to dig the entire lower surface of the room, and there was the sweet bitter surprise Hamdi's was anxiously waiting for. 3 fresh corpses were lying down in a hole under the unstable lower surface of the room. When Raya was confronted at the beginning, she denied any knowledge of the corpses under her floor, but the overuse of incense in the house was strong evidence against her. But when she was confronted by a discovered ring that seems to have mistakenly fallen in the burial hole, she became more and more confused. The ring that held the god's name had actually belonged to her husband, Hasaballah. Raya and Hasaballah continued to deny the charges against them. That was the case until Raya's daughter Badia, aged around 14, has approached Uzbasha Hamdi asking for immunity. Raya's daughter confessed on her mother of the 16 horrific crimes were done with the help of her father Hasaballah during the last 2 years. The details Badia provided totally matched with the autopsy reports that the reason of death was due to suffocation. She admitted that she attended one of the killings with her own eye. She described it as Raya luring her alleged friend and later victim into the house, make the victim drink a strong wine, then with the help of her husband would strap the victim tight and breach a piece of wet cloth into the victim's mouth, while shutting the nose closed until the victim has passed away. After more intense interrogation, Raya's story of denial has started to fall apart, but there was still one uncertain thing in the detection. The sketch itself did not totally match Raya's facial characteristics. It seemed as if it was for a person related to some degree to Raya. When one of Raya's neighbors was brought and confronted with the sketch, it was all clear. The sketch belonged in fact to Raya's younger sister, Sakina, the same highly wanted woman from the beginning of the investigation. The circle at last is complete. All was left is to locate the rest of the small pieces in the puzzle. After long consuming interrogation, all the involved members were discovered, caught, and murder charges were pressed against them. This includes Raya Hammam and her husband Hasaballah Moray, Sakina Hammam and her husband Muhammad Abdel Al, Urabi Hassan, a friend of Hasaballah and Abdel Al, and Abdel Razzaq Yusuf. We would highlight Abdel Razzaq Yusuf because he had an important role we will discuss later, and another 4 gold traders who used to bought the jewelries from the gang despite their knowledge of the horrific crimes. The gang confessed about the murder of 17 women in 1 year between December 1919 and November 1920, whom some of them used to work previously as prostitutes for Raya and Sakina. Some others were just friends of the 2 murderers. 14 of them were recognized. Raya and Sakina couldn't remember the rest, even though the real number is approximated to be higher than that. In 1875, Raya was born in Kala Aswan. Sakina was born in Kafr Zayyat, 1885. Their parents had died in an early stage of their lives. Both of the girls traveled to Kafr Zayyat to work in cotton collecting, where Raya met Hasaballah and received their first daughter Badia. They later traveled to Alexandria in 1913. Shortly after, Sakina divorced her original husband and followed Raya to Alaban neighborhood. It was where Abdel Al fell in love with her despite knowing the reality of her profession. He proposed to her and they married. Both of Raya and Sakina worked in prostitution, drug retailing, and other illegal activities. Considering the end of World War I that consumed Egypt's resources was not something uncommon that time. Set aside the Egyptians' revolution against the British in 1919 and the famine disaster that struck Egypt during that time. Raya and Sakina's families, despite operating illegal activities, they also were affected by these economic and political problems. One day, Raya suspected that Khudra, a prostitute of her, was stealing more than half of the wage she took from the serviced men at Raya's brothel. She started wearing more and more jewelry, and it became obvious that she did steal more than half of what she used to take. Raya was outraged by this, but she still wanted to maintain good relations with Khudra, since she was very loved by most of the brothel's customers. That was the case until Abdel Razzaq, another friend of the gang, has jokingly proposed to kill Khudra and take her jewelry as a punishment for her. The police report suspects that Abdel Razzaq was the one who shot the first bullet due to his horrible crime record and his extreme tendency towards using violence. In contrary to what some might believe, Raya and Sakina were from the Hammam clan, which was a very honorable and well-known clan. The 2 girls were actually expelled from the south because of the stain they made on the family's fame due to hookery and pimping activities. Abdulrazak stopped making jokes about it and started pursuing Raya and Sakina's husbands about it. They both refused, fearing the consequences, but when Abdulrazak proposed to take the entire responsibility in case they were caught, the two husbands, together with Raya and Sakina, became more motivated, and Khudra's fate was sealed. Sadly, this fate wouldn't stop to Khudra only, but many other prostitutes and other women would follow the same fate. After the execution of Raya and Sakina's crime gang, along with everyone knew about the crimes, the story marked a deep mark in the Egyptian art, cinema, and folklore. Some stories claim that the two sisters used to lure and murder the British soldiers as a form of resistance. As a result, the British propaganda wanted simply to diminish their fame. But that's a weak story, and was harshly criticized by the public. Other sympathists would pardon the two sisters of being abused and forced by their husbands. But this is also very unlikely, since Sakina's husband used to have a tattoo of Sakina's portrait on his right shoulder. He also married to her, despite her profession. Therefore, an abusive relation might have happened, but is very unlikely. The only reason the story was famously named after the two sisters was because the nature of the horrific crimes such as these were totally unexpected to be done by females. Some of Al-Laban police station knew Sakina's personally, but they still couldn't suspect any of the two sisters, despite the crystal clear similarity between the portrait and Sakina herself. The two sisters, along with all the involved, were executed by hanging on the 21st of December 1921, marking an end to the terror Al-Laban district have ever seen.